Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Benji-Sales live chat. It's so good to be back. It is so good to see everybody. How y'all doing today? Hope you're doing amazing. Hope you are doing great. I'm just a little bit out of breath because I did just get done lifting again right before the chat, so my apologies. But I am a little bit out of breath, but that's going to go away here in just a second. But that's not what y'all are here for. Y'all are here to talk about the video game industry, and that is right. We've got some big topics today for my people that love to talk about sales data. We got a whole bunch of interesting and exciting results out of the February NPD results for the US. So we have some news on how Elden Ring's doing, on how Horizon Forbidden West is doing, Pokemon Legends Arceus, Dying Light 2, and so much more. I'm going to break down all of that for you here in just a second. Right before I get into your comments and questions, we're going to talk about the overall results here in just a moment. So that's going to be the main topic, of course, I'm sure, for a lot of people. Going to be asking and talking about how those games are doing. Of course, we can also talk about this week there was a state of play. We can talk about some of the games that were announced there, or I know there's a whole bunch of discussion online around expectations for states of play, or if Microsoft should be doing them. So I'm sure we're going to go into all of that as well. We can talk about that. And yeah, so if anyone, this is your first time ever as part of my live chat, basically the way it works, it's a stream, it's a show, it's 100% driven by you. Your comments, your questions. We basically just break down the latest video game industry news here once a week. So there's going to be two ways to do that. First of all, there's the free method. You just type a question, it pops into chat, and I get to as many free questions as I possibly can. If you want to guarantee that I get to your question, the way to do that is going to be the super chat. Type a donation, whatever you want. It alerts me, and I get to super chats immediately. But as always, don't feel pressured. Don't feel obligated to donate into chat. It's just a way to help support me and the channel. I'm going to stream today for about a little over an hour, about an hour and 15 minutes. So we should be able to get to quite a few questions today. So let's get rocking. Let's get rolling. Really quick, let's talk about NPD before I get to your comments and questions so you guys have some context if you haven't seen them around what happened. So for hardware, Switch was the #1 best-selling console for the month. The #2 best-selling console for the month was the Xbox Series X and S, and the #3 best-selling console for the month was the PlayStation 5. As we know, right now, really who sells the best and worst, it really comes down to inventory, like seriously. All three placements on the rankings, it's really just about what you're shipping. Clearly, Switch and Xbox shipped more than PlayStation this month, so that's why they were able to outsell it. It's really volatile right now, right? Just last week, or not last week, last month in the US, we saw PlayStation 5 as the best-selling console. Now it's the worst-selling console, right? It just shows you it's really all down to inventory at the moment in terms of placement on rankings. Now for the year so far, Switch is the #1 best-selling console. There's only 2 months, right? January and February, but we do have some context around the year-to-date performance. Switch is the #1 selling platform for the year so far. #2 is Xbox Series X and S, and #3 is PlayStation 5 for January and February combined. Now, PlayStation 5 does have the highest revenue, though, for hardware of all three of those. So that was your results for the hardware side. Let's dip into software. There is a ton of freaking stuff to talk about here in terms of software. Tons and tons and tons. So first, let's really quick talk about Elden Ring. Elden Ring is your #1 best-selling game of the month. And keep in mind, y'all, that game only had 2 days of tracking for this period. In 2 days, it was able to become the #1 selling game of the month. That's incredible on its own, right? But you know what's even more incredible? With only 2 days of tracking, this game is already the 5th best-selling game of the last 12 months. That's right. If you look at the last 12 months of sales, in 2 days, Elden Ring is the 5th best-selling. It has already outsold the lifetime, right? The lifetime since they released performances of Battlefield 2042, Far Cry 6, Resident Evil Village. That gives you some context. Not only is Elden Ring a big launch, y'all, we're talking about a record-breaking launch, right? This is going to be one of the biggest RPG launches of all time, right? I'm not saying it's number one, right? We've had some giant ones like some of the Pokemon games. Yes, those are RPGs. We've had some huge ones like Cyberpunk 2077. You know, I'm not telling you it's the best RPG launch of all time, but it's literally one of the best launches ever in the RPG genre. Incredible performance for Elden Ring, like legitimately mind-blowing how big this game is launching. Every market we have data for, right? Huge in the US, huge in the UK, did really well in Japan. Biggest From Software launch ever, even in Japan. Huge results on Steam. This game is just on fire. Number 2 for the month, Horizon Forbidden West, also had what looks to be a very good launch, right? There's been a lot of debate about this. You know, is it a bad launch? Is it doing bad? Is it doing great? Is it doing huge? Here's the thing. We have a little more context around this now, but still actually lacking some. So it's still somewhat a bit of a mystery how this game is performing overall. So what's the good news for Horizon Forbidden West? First of all, it came in as the second best-selling game of the month of February. Great result. The only game that was above it was Elden Ring. And on the PlayStation charts, just PlayStation specifically, Horizon Forbidden West was actually ahead of Elden Ring in terms of revenue. So the one clear thing we can say, and also another data point, we found out that this was the biggest launch ever on PlayStation 5, right? So of any of the games that have launched on PlayStation 5 so far, including third party, didn't say first party, just said the biggest PlayStation 5 launch. So it's the biggest launch ever on PlayStation 5 in terms of revenue. So again, clearly Horizon is selling well, right? I don't think there's any debate this game's selling a lot of units. However, we are still lacking a little bit of context about how this ranks historically, right? We got no comparison data here on how it compares to Horizon Zero Dawn, and we also got no comparison data about how this launched compared to the other huge PS4 launches, right? Like The Last of Us Part 2, Spider-Man, God of War. There was no comparisons to any of those. So we just don't know, right? We know that this game is definitely selling well. I mean, I don't think you can go out and say Horizon Forbidden West is a bomb. It is clearly selling well. We just still are lacking a little bit of data about how this is comparing to other huge, right? Like the biggest PlayStation launches. How does it compare to those? We still actually don't really know. But clearly, Horizon is selling well. I'll give you the rest of your top 20 really quick, and then we'll start diving into your comments and questions. Number 3, Pokemon Legends Arceus, doing really well still, right? It was number 1 in January, still in the top 3 for this month, and the only 2 games that were above it were 2 giant brand new releases. So Pokemon Legends Arceus, and that's not including digital, right? Nintendo doesn't give digital data to NPD. So great legs looking for Pokemon Legends. Number 4, Dying Light 2 Stay Human. Great launch for Dying Light. Number 5, and a bit of a surprise, Total War Warhammer 3 coming in at number 5. And that's as a PC exclusive. So that looks like a really good launch, right? We don't have exact units, but I think top 5, especially for a month as big as February was for a PC exclusive, that's got to look pretty good. Number 6, Call of Duty Vanguard. Number 7, Madden 22. Number 8, Mario Kart 8. Number 9, FIFA 22. Number 10, Minecraft. Number 11, Spider-Man Miles Morales. Still rocking those crazy legs, right? I mean, seriously, Miles Morales is one of the leggiest PlayStation games I've ever seen. It really is crazy how that game is just always in the charts. So congrats to Sony and Insomniac on that one. Number 12, Mario Party Superstars. Number 13, Animal Crossing New Horizons. Great legs here for the Nintendo games like we pretty much always see. Number 14, Smash Brothers Ultimate. Number 15, Black Ops Cold War. Number 16, Grand Theft Auto The Trilogy Definitive Edition. 17 is NBA 2K22. And then I just lost myself. 18, Pokemon Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl. Number 19, Far Cry 6. And number 20, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. So that's your quick NPD recap there, everybody. We're going to get rocking now on your comments and questions. Let's get going. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, start dropping those into chat. I'm going to be really disgusting and chug a protein shake really quick. Give me just a second. It's going to be nasty. I'm going to step away from the mic, and then I'm going to dive into your comments and questions. Give me like 5 seconds. All right, I'm back. Sorry, disgusting, I know. All right, let's get going. We have a couple super chats really quick. Plastic Hearts Podcast here, dropping a 5 right off the bat. Thank you so much, Plastic Hearts. Thanks for being in every chat and always being so supportive. Benji Button. 3 investors bought $103 million in Activision Blizzard stock days before the Microsoft announcement. Can this kind of insider trading halt/prolong the deal? So will it halt it? Like, will it completely keep this from going through? No, not really, or at least extremely unlikely, right? Now, what it does do potentially is get these guys in a lot of trouble, and also potentially it could drag it out a little bit, right? Depending on how much the legal system's going to go after them, how long this is going to get dragged out, how much more investigating they need to do. This sort of thing isn't. It's very unlikely that it's going to completely shut down the deal, right? Because there's no indication that Microsoft themselves did any sort of insider trading towards this acquisition. There currently at least is no evidence that, say, Bobby Kotick was doing insider trading. I know that there is some evidence that these guys are kind of linked to Bobby, but I don't think that this particular, you're seeing some people run with it and be like, oh, this is going to ruin the deal. I think that's really, really unlikely. But, I mean, if they are able to prove that these guys were insider trading, they could get in huge legal trouble. And depending on how this affects the overall investigation, then there could be, I would say, at least prolonging it. It starts to get a little sketchy if people within Microsoft or, let's say, Bobby Kotick himself, if they started to get pulled into it and there was starting to be evidence of themselves, the major players, right? The people running these companies doing some sort of insider deals, then things would get very sketchy, right? But as of now, it doesn't really look like it. So this could be a bit of an issue, but I don't think that there's any chance that this affects the overall deal at all, this specific piece of info. I don't think so. But yeah, those guys, if they really were doing some sketchy stuff, they could be in huge trouble. They really could. Thanks for that super chat, Plastic Hearts. Thanks for always being so supportive. We got a 2 super chat here from Split N89. What is up, Split N89? Best mod in the business. Good, buddy. Good stuff by Horizon with a record month. Yeah, exactly. No matter what, Horizon's definitely selling well, right? We basically know that. It's selling a lot of units. This game's definitely sold a few million units. I would say that it still looks like how I was saying last chat, pretty unlikely that this came close to a record overall, right? Keep that in mind. The wording that was used by NPD, they didn't say it was the biggest PlayStation launch. They didn't say that this was comparable to God of War or Spider-Man 2018. Now, maybe it was, but they left that out. But that's pretty uncommon. Usually, Matt Piscatella, who does the PR for NPD, I mean, he does a lot more than that, right? He actually works for NPD, but he's the one who releases the PR. Usually, if something's an outright record, he will mention it. No indication that this is near a record for PlayStation overall, but it does clearly show that it's the biggest PlayStation 5 launch ever, and I would imagine it's outpacing Zero Dawn, right? Zero Dawn only sold, and when I say only, it sold well, but it only sold 2 million units, over 2 million, but less than 3 million units in its first 2 weeks. If that was the result for Forbidden West, let's say this game sold 2 point something million in its first 2 weeks, I actually would consider that a major underperformance, considering that the first one was a new IP, went on to sell over 20 million units, and, it has a much bigger install base overall to launch on. Now, there are some issues with that, right? Because we know the PlayStation 5 install base is being held back right now due to shortages. But if it was tracking around the same as Zero Dawn, I personally would consider that an underperformance, but I have to imagine it's doing better than that. So overall, looking pretty good for Horizon. Yeah, for sure. All right. Was that the only super chats? That's it. We only had 2 super chats off the bat, so we're good to go to start rocking into your free comments and questions. Elias Stapleton. Do you think there is a good price Katakawa, and I don't know if that's how you say it, so I apologize, would sell? No. I mean, who would imagine Activision would sell? Who would imagine the independent forever loves a Bungie would sell. What do you think? No, I really don't think so. I know a lot of PlayStation fans are kind of, and when I say this word, don't take this in the wrong way, but pretty desperate for Sony to buy From. And I'm only saying that because of my mentions on Twitter. Like, I'm getting tons of people being like, Sony buy From, Sony buy From. I'm telling y'all, I do not see this happening. I really, really don't. If they get a crazy offer, if someone comes up and is offering, like crazy stupid money, it could happen. I'm not going to tell you that there's a 0% chance, but right now I feel like From is just way too valuable for them, and they're probably looking at the upside on how much bigger From can get moving forward. Like, Elden Ring was the breakout moment for this studio. We've all known that they've been growing and doing better with new games over time, right? Dark Souls just kept getting bigger and bigger as they released. Sekiro did excellent for them at launch, but this is a whole nother level. I am not going to tell you, Elias, that it's impossible that someone buys From, but I do find it very unlikely. Very unlikely. So we'll have to see. I'm not going to tell you it's impossible, but a couple things to keep in mind there. Activision, when it sold, it was an independently owned company, right? Like it was. It's a giantly, and when I say independent, I don't mean that it's not a publicly traded company, because they are, but like no one else owned Activision. It's Activision. Same thing with Bungie. Bungie was owned by Bungie, right? So those were easier to sell. From is not self-owned. They're owned by somebody else. So you would have to convince them, right, Katakawa, to sell From. If From was independent, I would actually tell you that there was a decent chance that they get acquired. I wouldn't say it's a lock, but decent. But the fact that they're not, that means it's not up to From Software, right? It's not up to them. Somebody else has to convince the owners to sell it. So it does make it more difficult. Not impossible, but I wouldn't rank it as very likely right now that somebody's going to acquire From. I find that pretty unlikely. And then last question, man. I feel Sony will do an event in September again. That's a pretty good bet. And that it's quiet all year and maybe a God of War State of Play and Spartacus announcements and done. Year done. Thoughts? Great question. Great question. I really thought that the first State of Play we would get from Sony would be bigger, right? We've been talking on this chat about it, about how now that Gran Turismo's out, there isn't a single first-party exclusive game with an announcement of a date from Sony. Right now, there's none. If you look at a calendar in terms of first-party exclusives, right, we know that there's a first-party game on the docket, MLB The Show 21, but that game, or 22, but that game's multi-platform, right? It's going to be on PlayStation, going to be on Xbox, going to be on Switch this year. There's not a single game coming from PlayStation right now with a release date that's exclusive to PS5, because Forspoken is being made by Square Enix. So I really thought, whenever we get that first showing from Sony this year, it's probably going to be pretty beefy, just because they're going to want to get some dates on the board. But they haven't. So that is a bit surprising. I did not expect that. So I do think we'll have to hear God of War date somewhat soon. But I agree, Elias, that it's looking more likely to me now that God of War, whenever we get that date, probably going to be its own thing. Like you said, maybe a State of Play and they announce the date there, or maybe they'll just announce the date completely separately in like a big blog post, with a new trailer or something like that. But I do agree, Elias, it looks unlikely to me now that there's going to be some secret giant PlayStation showcase, in the next month or so, since we just got this State of Play. Can't rule it out. But yeah, it could be a while before we get like a huge extravaganza show from them, right? With like a ton of first party announcements. That could be later this year. You're right. But they'll have to announce God of War's date somewhat soon, right? That game needs a date soon. We're already in March. So if it is coming out this year, they're going to have to start talking about it soon. Forzathon is back. Hi, Benji. Do you think the insane amount of success of Elden Ring will change how the industry looks at single-player games? I do think that this game will have a bit of an impact on game design, similarly to how Breath of the Wild had a big impact on game design, right? There's a lot of game designers and devs that have talked about it, that things that they did in their game, they felt a bit inspired by Breath of the Wild with some of the stuff they've done. Does that mean that I think you're going to see like a million, Dark Souls, Elden Ring type clones out of this? No, but I think it might impact a bit of the design on some of these like open world games, because I haven't actually started Elden Ring yet, right? I'm finishing up Horizon Forbidden West right now, super deep into that game, 70 hours in, going for the platinum. But I'm going to be starting Elden Ring really soon, in the next few days, because I'm almost done with Horizon. But everything I'm reading is that a lot of the game design of the open world itself is pretty revolutionary in terms of just how they work the map and how the game flows. So I could definitely, Forzathon, see devs taking inspiration from that, right? Again, I don't know if it means there's going to be a million direct clones, but I bet you there's quite a few devs in meetings right now that are talking about things that Elden Ring is doing. I can almost guarantee you that, yeah. Yoda Soda. Why do you think Guardians of the Galaxy didn't meet Square Enix's sales expectations? Great question. It is an epic single-player blockbuster superhero game. Why didn't it sell well? Is Square expectations too high? Yoda Soda, I really think this is a two-pronged thing that led to this. I think there's two key things that led to it. First of all, Avengers, right? Avengers came out, and a lot of people forget, because the game's legs were so bad, but a lot of people forget that Avengers launched. When Avengers first came out, it did really well in the first few days, right? This game at launch was the second biggest superhero game ever at launch in the United States. The only game that launched bigger was Spider-Man 2018, right? So a lot of people forget that, because it's become it dropped off so hard, right? After the first few days, it really completely collapsed. But Avengers started really strong. And I think a lot of people, because, Square Enix made Avengers and Square Enix made Guardians, I think a lot of people played that Avengers game, felt underwhelmed by it, and that really affected their expectations of Guardians of the Galaxy, right? I think very few people expected Guardians to be as good as it was. Then secondly, you had the E3 showing, and a lot of people forget this as well, because now that Guardians has come out, I love it. The game is excellent. It's awesome. But that E3 presentation, for some reason, I don't know if they were using a super old build or if just the way the trailer was cut wasn't done very well, but a lot of people forget that game did not look great at E3, right? When Square Enix showed it off, I saw a lot of negativity around it, even just the way the game looked. From me, my personal viewpoint, I was like, I want to play it because I love Marvel, so I'm trying to play all the Marvel games, but I was like, man, that didn't look great. So I think that also caught a lot of people off guard, that when this game actually came out, it was like, wait, no, this game's actually really, really good. So we need to see how Guardians' legs are, right? We just need to see. There's not a ton of indications that legs are great or excellent, but I'm hoping that this is a game that can sell really well over time. But Yoda Soda, I think that is the 1-2 punch that really hurt it. I think Avengers hurt it really bad, and I think that E3 showing also didn't do it any favors. Eddie Brock. Square Enix's Western arm is struggling hard. Yeah, it's true. All of their Western games / developers are having dud after dud and didn't meet sales expectations. What do you think they should do? Sell the Western arm off? This is a great question, Eddie Brock. Great question. So, in regards to like their Western studios, you are right. There has not been a commercial, right? We're just talking about commercial, because I think reception-wise, they have had some games that were well received, right? Case in point, Guardians. But in terms of like a big blockbuster sales, we know for a fact that Avengers missed expectations because they've talked about it. We know that Guardians, at least in the launch quarter, missed expectations. We know that the Tomb Raider franchise really fell off for them, and they're not even making Tomb Raider games anymore. And in fact, Crystal Dynamics is actually making a game for Xbox now, right? They're making Perfect Dark, so they're not even making a Square Enix title at the moment, unless there's a second project, but their main one's not. So Deus Ex, the newest one, I think it was Mankind Divided, I think. That one missed sales expectations. So yeah, it's a long... Outriders missed their sales expectations, which isn't a studio Square Enix owns, but they publish it. So yes, as Eddie Brock notes, there just hasn't been a game from their Western publishing arm that's done really great for them. This is a hard one, Eddie. I would say... I honestly think that Square Enix should consider selling them. And I don't mean because these studios aren't talented, because they really are. Crystal Dynamics has a ton of talent. Eidos Montreal has a ton of talent. But it's clear that right now the synergy between Square Enix on the Japanese side and what's going on with their Western games, whether it's the budget allocations, whether it's the strategies around these games, there's a whole bunch of questions. But yeah, it's just not really working. It's a tough question. I would say selling them should not be off the table, right? I don't necessarily say you rush out and do that, but if you get a really attractive offer for these studios, maybe you consider it, because maybe somebody else can just find more success with them. Otherwise, maybe they need to lower the budgets on these games. Because if you're just constantly saying it's missing expectations, like it's a constant thing, right? It's not one of those things where it's like, oh, one-off, like every freaking time it feels like now. Square Enix is like, miss expectations, miss expectations, miss expectations. If you're doing that over and over and over and over again, and you're going to keep these studios, maybe at the very least you need to bring those budgets down and have them working on smaller projects or something. But yeah, they need to do something, Yoda Soda. I don't think they can continue, Eddie Brock, I don't think they can continue the exact thing they're doing right now long term, because it just doesn't seem to be working. But we'll have to see. Justin Tanhill, if you could pick 2 studios to collaborate on a game together or bring back a game, what 2 studios and games would you pick? Oh man, this is tough. Actually, you know what? I'll say it right now. From Software and Sony, Bloodborne 2. That is my answer, Justin. If we're talking 2 studios, and bring something back, because a lot of people forget Bloodborne was co-developed with Sony. Sony themselves did have devs working on that game, right? They weren't just the publisher. They actually assisted From Software in the development. Sony Japan Studio. So there you go. That would be my answer. I love Bloodborne. I think it's a mistake that IP is just sitting on the sidelines. So that's my answer, Justin. From Software, Sony, bring back Bloodborne 2. There you go. I think there might have been a super chat. Let me hit that. We do. Highlander001 with a 5 super chat. Thank you so much, Highlander. I just got a Stratocaster signed by Meatloaf. Nice. My son got it as a gift for me. It's awesome, Highlander. I know you were mentioned getting some guitars in an earlier chat as well. I'm going to always shout out guitars because I play guitar. Played it since I was like 11 or 12 years old, my whole life. So that's awesome. Shout out, Highlander. Sick. Getting the Strat signed by Meatloaf. Dope. And shout out to your son as well. And thank you for that super chat. Super kind of you, Highlander. You always are. Gary Sanchez. What are your thoughts on the Overwatch 2 news? Thank God, finally, right? And do you think Overwatch 2 was necessary when Blizzard could have continued support for Overwatch? Yeah, this is a great question because I think, and I've said this before publicly, I really think that Overwatch is possibly the most mishandled IP in the history of this video game industry. And that's a big statement to make, and I'm pretty confident about it. Or at the very least, I would put it in the top 5. I mean, I really would put this in the top 5 most mishandled franchises ever in gaming. It's that severe what happened with Overwatch. So people forget this thing was a behemoth when it came out. And it wasn't one of those games that was a behemoth for like a month and then fell off the charts, right? Because we've seen that. People forget Overwatch was huge for years, right? And I think it launched 2015. I want to say Overwatch launched in 2015. Let me double confirm that. Or 2016, right. So at the very least, its first like 2 years, this thing was massive. It was huge in 2016. It was huge in 2017. They were talking about the sort of, microtransaction DLC money that was coming in on this thing. It was a beast. Overwatch was ginormous. It hit tens and tens of millions of players rapidly. And keep in mind, it was doing that not as a free-to-play game, right? Overwatch, you had to buy. And this game, we've seen games now, right, that are free to play that hit crazy player counts. Overwatch was hitting tens of millions of players as a purchased game. This thing was huge. Then, I mean, and I assume this came down from Activision upper management. I don't know this for a fact. They made the crazy decision, and this to me, it is crazy, y'all, to decide, okay, this game's a giant success. The industry right now is all about service games. Not everything, right? We look at Elden Ring, but I mean for multiplayer games. It's about service. It's about constantly keeping good content dropping. It's about keeping people engaged. Look at Fortnite. Look at Apex Legends. Look at games like this. No, we're not going to do any of that. In fact, what we're going to do, we're going to end all support, essentially. This game hasn't had a new hero or maps in years, right? Big maps or big new heroes, years. We're going to end all of that. We're just not going to support this game anymore, and we're going to make an Overwatch 2. I mean, that is crazy. That is an actually crazy decision. Like crazy. I don't even know the thought process behind that, other than Activision just wanting to get another box on shelves to sell. So they end all support essentially for Overwatch. The game completely collapses. Now, there's still people that play Overwatch. I still play Overwatch. It still does have a community. But this thing fell off radically. And it's taken years and years to get Overwatch out the door, Overwatch 2. So here's the thing. I actually think this is great news that the multiplayer is going to launch first. It seems that is much further along, which makes sense because Overwatch originally was a PvP game. Get that out as quickly as you freaking can and support that thing, right? It sounds like PvE is now going to launch later. So it's great news. Now, can they make Overwatch as big as it was, right? Have they completely burned this franchise to the ground, essentially, from what it could have been? That is possible. I mean, this game should have had a Netflix series. I'm not kidding with how beloved the heroes are and stuff. I mean, this IP should have been managed way better than it has been. I'm hopeful that Overwatch 2 is going to rejuvenate it. It's great news that this thing is going to be coming in beta in April, and it sounds like, I don't think it's impossible that the multiplayer component itself is fully out this year. I think that is possible. So that's all great. But yeah, I mean, it was such a mishandling of such a giant property. It is shocking. It is shocking what they did with that game. Miles Morales. Benji boy, what is up, Miles? Hope you are doing good. Do you think it is possible Spider-Man 2 Wolverine KOTOR remake sell extremely well, that PlayStation will double down into making even more licensed Disney games? Could we see 5, 7, 8, or even 10 licensed Disney games in development at PlayStation? Ooh, good question. Clearly there is a strong partnership right now between PlayStation and Disney, right? Because as you mentioned, we've had multiple Spider-Man games already come out. We now have Wolverine on the board, and we have KOTOR, which as of now is a console PlayStation exclusive, right? We don't know how long that's going to be. We actually don't know if that's permanent or timed. But as of now, like at launch, it's going to be, a PlayStation exclusive. Clearly, besides PC, clearly there is a strong partnership between Disney and Sony. Will we see like 5, 7, 8, or 10 licensed Disney games? That to me seems a little high. I think they are going to want to focus on their own IP first and foremost. But I would not rule out, if let's say Wolverine is huge like Spider-Man 2018 was, and let's say that KOTOR remake sells a ton, could you see a couple more Marvel and Star Wars games go exclusive? That is possible. Yeah, I wouldn't rule it out. I wouldn't rule it out if, Wolverine's giant and this is going great for Disney and Marvel, and they're like, hey, Disney and Sony, hey, Sony, do you want to tackle another Marvel character? Wouldn't rule it out. Wouldn't rule it out, Miles. I don't know that we're going to go as high as like the 7, 8, or 10, but you could see more. Yeah, it's possible. Jason Benjamin. Hi, so PlayStation is planning on bringing back Sly Cooper, Twisted Metal, SOCOM Resistance, Motorstorm, according to rumors. Do you think these games will sell well or have a niche audience? And do you think it is a good thing that PlayStation is reviving many of its beloved classic IPs? Here's the thing. Okay, let's look at the games you mentioned. Sly Cooper. Do I think Sly Cooper can do well? I actually do, as long as budget is smart, right? Sly Cooper's not going to come out and sell 10 million units, right? Extremely unlikely. Am I going to say it's impossible? I never say this sort of stuff's impossible because you never know what could happen. But is it likely that Sly Cooper's going to come out here and sell 10 million units? Very unlikely. Is Sly Cooper going to come out and maybe sell, 1 to 2 million units, maybe 3, right? That'd be good. Something like that's possible. So they need to budget accordingly. But I think it's worth doing, put it that way, because Sony themselves doesn't have a ton of family-friendly games, right? You look at most of their lineup, not all, but most, it's mostly M-rated, or if it's not M-rated, it's like a pretty serious T, right? You look at even something like Horizon Forbidden West. That game's not like a, bad game or has tons of nudity and language in it. Not at all. But it's like also a game that's pretty unlikely that like a 7-year-old's going to play Horizon. Not going to say none do, but pretty unlikely. Something like Sly Cooper gives them something in their portfolio that's like an all ages thing, adults or kids. So I do think it's smart. Just keep the budget tight, right? So it's within that 1 to 2 to 3 million unit range, lifetime. So yes, I would say Sly Cooper smart to bring back. Twisted Metal, to me, I'll be honest, and I hope I'm wrong, this one makes a lot less sense. They're also doing a show for Twisted Metal. I don't feel like the show or the game will do well, but I hope I'm wrong. I'm always rooting for games to do well, but Twisted Metal doesn't feel like a franchise that really works nowadays, right? Just in tone and stuff, I don't know. It doesn't feel like a game to me that's going to do well or a show that's going to do well, but I hope I'm wrong. So Twisted Metal I'd be a lot less bullish on than Sly Cooper. Resistance, if this came back, I think very smart. Sony does not really have big first-party, first-person shooters right now. We know there's a couple coming from like partners and stuff, but I think getting an in-house FPS would be smart. There's a lot of nostalgia for Resistance. So I actually think this would be smart. I think if they do it, it needs to be a reboot, like a complete reboot. Keep a similar, story, similar universe, but just reboot it, right? Yeah, I think that's pretty smart. Motorstorm, I'm going to go more towards Twisted Metal in that I would not expect it to do well because the last couple Motorstorms did not do well, even being good games. So that's how I'd rank them. If I was to rank, right, like you would say best to worst ideas to bring back out of those, I'd put Sly Cooper number 1 actually, just because it gives them something very different in their portfolio, and I think you can make it for a lot cheaper than Resistance. So I'd put Sly Cooper number 1. Number 2, I would put Resistance. Number 3, I would put Motorstorm. And number 4, I'd put Twisted Metal. I'm very surprised Twisted Metal is coming back. Ken B, are you as surprised as I am that Total War Warhammer 3 came in at number 5 for the month? Great job for a PC-only game that was on Game Pass day 1. Ken, I am. Yeah, that's excellent. Like I said at the top, great. I mean, a PC exclusive to be top 5 in a big month like February, right? February had a lot of big releases, hit that top 5, and as a PC exclusive and being on Game Pass, it really is. Yeah, Ken, that game clearly did well. Yep, I agree with you on that, Ken, clearly. I think we just had a super chat drop. We did, from Ryan Epps. Thank you so much, Ryan, for this nice $10 super chat. Thank you so much, Ryan. It's good, Benji. Best be staying lit, fam. Hope this wasn't asked, but are you diving into Grand Theft Auto 5 Expanded next week? And do you think it'll be worth its price point? Hit my line if you're trying to co-op in Elden Ring. Thank you so much, Ryan. So a couple questions here. First of all, Grand Theft Auto 5, am I going to play it? I actually am going to play it because, believe it or not, I have not played Grand Theft Auto 5 since its original release on PS3 and 360. I never played to the PS4 and Xbox One enhancements, and so for me, this is going to be a lot enhanced from the only time I played it, which was 360 and PS3. Now, it doesn't look like this is a giant leap, at least from what we've seen, from what was on PS4 and Xbox One. It does look like it has some improvements, but it doesn't look like it's like a giant leap. But for me, it'll be really big because I loved that game and I haven't played it since that generation. However, I won't be playing it at launch because there's just way too much out, right? I'm trying to finish Horizon. I'm 70 hours into that game. I got another 80 to 100 hours on Elden Ring in front of me. I still got to get to Dying Light 2. I'm excited for the new Kirby game. Like, there's just so much on my plate. So I'm definitely going to play Grand Theft Auto 5, but it might take me a little bit to get to it. in terms of the pricing, I think it actually might be worth the price, specifically because it's very cheap. I thought this was going to cost a lot more money for the upgrade. I don't remember what the exact price is off the top of my head, but it's not full price. I really thought that they were going to drop this thing, I'm not kidding, at like 60 bucks or maybe at like 40, but I think it's even under that. So that's a big surprise, at least at launch, right? I think there's some sort of deal where at launch it's cheaper than it will be later on or something. So if you can get this as a cheap upgrade, like if you already own the game and then the upgrade itself is pretty cheap, yeah, might be worth it, to be honest with you. I would say if this is like a brand new $60 thing, it might not be, but from what it sounds like, probably. And then hit you up for co-op in Elden Ring. You never know. Maybe when I get to it. My PlayStation profile is open. It's just Benji-Sales on PlayStation and Xbox. I don't usually accept too many friend requests just because I get tons of them. I'm sure, as you can imagine, I get flooded with them. But I'm never going to rule out playing with the community, right? If I ever get to streaming on Twitch, which I do plan on doing at some point, I definitely want to set aside time while I'm streaming to stream with you guys. So, could be. You never know, Ryan. Thank you for that super chat. And thank you for being so kind. All right, let's get back to your free questions. How long have we been going? We still got time. I'm still going to go for about 30 minutes. So I still got time to get to all your questions. Joseki, what is up, Joseki? Benji, do you think Sony should change the state of play formula? This is a good question. They never really deliver what people expect. Also, shout out to Square Enix releasing 4 different strategic RPGs on Switch this year, from releasing none for years to saturating the genre. I hope they all manage to not cannibalize each other. I love the genre. So, good question. Let's talk about states of plays, right? There's a ton of debate I'm seeing online about state of play versus Nintendo Directs. I will say, I think one mistake that Sony's doing with their state of play is that Nintendo's a lot better at is it's pretty rare, not unheard of, but it's pretty rare Nintendo drops a Nintendo Direct without one major announcement, right? You usually get at least one big, and when I say big, like a big announcement in their Nintendo Directs, right? Again, I don't want to say it's never happened where a Nintendo Direct comes out and there's like no super like, whoa, hype announcement. But it's rare, honestly. You're probably at like a 90% plus batting average that you're getting, even if it's not a game you're hyped for, like individually. There's at least one really big announcement in there. I think one issue that Sony's been having with a lot of these states of plays is that many of them are lacking that big announcement. Now, they've had some. There are some state of plays they've had where there's a big announcement and you're like, holy crap, that is super hype that was there. But a lot of them aren't. I think one thing Sony is doing an excellent job of with state of play, like excellent, like I have to praise them for this. Their states of plays that are dedicated to individual games have almost universally been excellent, right? That Gran Turismo state of play was awesome. The Horizon Forbidden West one was awesome. The Ghost of Tsushima one, The Last of Us Part 2, like they're states of plays that are a big, beefy gameplay breakdown, really showing you what this game is. Those have been fantastic. So they're killing it in regards to that. But yeah, these other states of plays that are just like various games, I really think Sony should commit to at least one big thing there where people are really like, holy crap, that was super hype. Because even one big announcement can really turn these things around in terms of perception. So I think that's the thing that's lacking. Otherwise, I applaud them for at least doing these states of plays. I think Microsoft's leaving huge mind share on the board not doing these. To be perfectly frank with you, Microsoft have got to step their game up in terms of marketing their games, like in third-party games. One E3 showcase a year is just not cutting it in 2022. It really isn't. You need to be showing stuff more often. But yeah, if I was going to have a criticism, right, what's my criticism of state of play? Too many of these we leave and everyone's like, where was that big announcement? They need to try to secure at least one big thing per state of play. And if you can't, maybe you just don't do a state of play, right? Maybe you wait another couple months before you drop that thing. But I think that would help. And in regards to Square Enix releasing a lot of strategy RPGs, yeah, what a shocker, right? This is normally a genre that is fairly niche, and we don't get a lot of them, right? It's always super hype when there's a new Fire Emblem game that comes out, but there ain't a lot of them. And now all of a sudden, Square Enix is like, yo, let's just drop them all. So that is a surprise. I hope they do well. It's a cool genre and an underrepresented one. Sean Macias. What are your thoughts on Pixel Opus working on a new Sly Cooper game instead of Sucker Punch? I actually like this. I think this is a good fit. So for anyone that missed it, that is the current rumor. We do not have this confirmed as fact, but the rumor is that Pixel Opus from Sony is making the next Sly Cooper game. I actually really like this decision, and there's going to be a couple key reasons, Sean. First of all, would I love a Sucker Punch Sly Cooper? Absolutely. But that team right now is clearly focused on the Ghost of Tsushima universe, right? I mean, clearly that's going to be their next game as a sequel to Ghost of Tsushima. I don't know if it's going to exactly have Jin as the main character. Maybe they're going to do some sort of other playing around with it. But that game was way too big of a success, and it was such a big success. Sony's even making a movie of it. You don't not follow that up. So clearly they're all hands on deck on Ghost of Tsushima. That's the right choice. That's the right decision. That game's going to be huge when it comes out, whatever the sequel ends up being. And I also like that it's Pixel Opus because I really liked their last game. What was the name of it? Concrete Genie. I only played that last year, and I actually was kind of caught off guard on how good and enjoyable I really thought that game was. And I think this also keeps the budget lower, like I was talking about, right? Pixel Opus is a small studio. This, to me, says that they're going to keep the scope of the project in check. That's key for something like Sly Cooper. If this thing comes out and sells 5 million units, then great, right? We're all surprised. It's amazing. Heck yeah, Sly's back. But I think you should be budgeting it like 1 to 2 million would be a solid result. And Pixel Opus being such a small studio, that to me says that that's in check. So I like that. I like that, Sean. I think it's a good idea. I think we had a super chat. Let me hit that super chat really quick. 2 super chats. Holy cow. Thank you, guys. Benji here with a 10. Super generous of you, Benji. Thank you so much. Hi, Benji. How much the fantastic reviews helped Elden Ring's sales? It seems reviews helped big time. So reviews contribute directly to sales? Did sub 90 Metacritic impact Forbidden West's potential? Thank you so much for that super chat, Benji. So here's the thing. We have ample data now, that very high Metacritic, right? And whenever I say very high, I'm talking over 90. There's no doubt that it has an impact on sales. I think we can clearly say that from several games. Elden Ring, absolutely. Breath of the Wild, I think, absolutely. And you can kind of go across the board, right? If you look back at games historically that are well over 90, right? We're talking about these games that hit these 93s, 94s, 95s. If you're getting those kind of reviews, to me, there's just no doubt that that is boosting your sales. Because maybe not everyone pays specifically attention to Metacritic, but a lot of people, the reality is they do, even if they don't look at Metacritic, maybe they check IGN, or maybe they check GameSpot, or maybe if you're getting that high of reviews, that just means the overall, wherever you're looking, whenever this game's coming out, you're seeing praise for it all over the place. That's going to boost, right? One of the most powerful marketing tools in games is word of mouth. And if you're getting that kind of word of mouth and buzz prior to launch, it's going to boost you. So I definitely think so. Now, if you're like a bit under that, right, is the difference between an 85 Metacritic and an 88 Metacritic? Does that make any difference? I think it has 0, right? I'm going to tell you, I think that has quite literally 0. Whenever you're talking about small scale differences like that. Is an 82 to an 86 a giant difference in sales? Probably pretty unlikely, right? But maybe once you go over a 10-point scale, right, does 70s Metacritic compared to an 80s Metacritic make a difference? I think there's a little bit of evidence of that, but I think the main thing we can pull out, right, what's the main thing? If you're hitting well over 90, that is a big boost. I think that's the biggest differential maker in terms of reviews. If you can get 90 plus, that's big. And did Horizon specifically getting under 90 hurt its potential? I don't think so overall, right? I mean, maybe if this thing got 95 meta, do I think it would have boosted it? Yeah, I do think it would have boosted it a little bit like we were just talking about. But do I think, like, it would have made, like, Horizon would have doubled in sales with 90. I don't know about that. I think it would have elevated it, but not necessarily to the degree that, like, because it already was really high, right? It was 88. I think if it would have got 95, it would have made a difference. It would have sold a bit more. But, you know, we're not talking like a 70s to a 90s difference, right? It's pretty close to that 90. All right. Thank you so much for that super chat, Benji. And then Timmer with a 2 super chat. Keep being awesome. Thank you so much, Timmer. You keep being awesome as well and keep digging up fantastic stuff on Twitter. And thank you for being in every chat I think I've ever had. All right, super chats are cleared again. Let's hit some more of your free questions. Venom Harness. When do you think the PS5 Pro and PS5 Slim will release? 2024? What specs do you expect the PS5 Pro to have? Because some people say PS5 Pro isn't needed, so maybe they make it have PS3 cell processor too. Venom Harness, I am the opposite of those people that say that. I often see people say that the chip shortages means no mid-gen refresh, and that, and I could end up wrong, but I feel like I'm definitely not, and all this kind of thing. I actually feel the opposite. I feel that it's the pandemic and the chip shortages have essentially guaranteed mid-gen refreshes, and the main reason is because this generation is going to be hella long. Buckle up, y'all. We're going to be in this generation for a very long time. So the way you keep those sales healthy for a very long time is you release a mid-gen refresh. Really think it's going to happen. Like, I'm pretty dang confident that you're going to see both Xbox and PlayStation have mid-gen refreshes strictly because of the length of this generation. Now, when can we expect them? Not anytime soon, because we still haven't even locked in support or, you know, widespread manufacturing for these consoles. So I wouldn't expect it soon, right? 2024, maybe. I would lean more towards 2025. I think 2025 would be when we get these mid-gen refreshes. And people might be like, Benji, that's 5 years after launch. Well, y'all, I think this generation is going at least 8 years. So, you know, that would at least keep another 3 years of healthy sales for your platforms late in the generation. So, 2024, maybe, but that seems a little early. I would put the mid-gen refreshes probably in that 2025 period. A Slim, I don't know. That to me is a massive wild card. I have no idea when you would see a Slim, or even if you would see a Slim. You know, probably, but I have no idea when that would be. Mid-gen refreshes, I'll pencil in right now for 2025. Ulfric Stormcloak. With Nintendo expanding into theme parks with Universal Studios with Mario Land, and Sony expanding more into the media, it was one of the key factors for the Bungie acquisition. What do you think is something Microsoft could expand into? Maybe they could expand into comics. Ulfric, I think, here's the thing. There's a lot of demand right now for video games in movies and shows. And you're seeing Microsoft attempt that with Halo. And Sony, as we know, is all in. Like, it's crazy how many projects are going on over at Sony. They even have a whole division dedicated to it. I would say Ulfric, frankly, movies and TV, just because there's so many deals right now getting struck in the industry. Hollywood's desperate for something besides comic book movies to make that get huge numbers, right? There can be successes still in Hollywood that aren't comic book based, right? We do see some of those. There is movies that come out that are huge, but a lot of what's driving the industry right now is comic book films. It's just the reality. Marvel is still, I mean, if you look at like the top 5 box office for the US, even during the pandemic, a lot of it was comic book movies, right? It was Shang-Chi, it was, you know, Venom, Let There Be Carnage, it was Black Widow, right? All these kinds of movies were, even during the pandemic, the main drivers. And I think Hollywood really wants something else to bank on besides just comic book stuff. So I think that's why you're seeing them get so aggressive with streaming and movie deals for video game IP, because it's at least something different. So I would say for Microsoft, if they find success with Halo, I don't think they should just rush in and try and sign everything away. But Halo's already been renewed for Season 2. If that show does pretty well for them, maybe you start exploring some more of your IP, right, into movies and streaming shows. So I would say it's a smart idea. I can tell you something that's pretty crazy. So I work in retail, right? After Uncharted came out in the movie theaters, I had multiple kids, not one, this happened to me multiple times while I was working, Kids, younger people, come up to me and say, do you have Uncharted games? Do you have the Uncharted game? I even had a kid come up and ask me, did they make Uncharted for Xbox? And this was literally right after the movie launched. Clearly, a lot of people forget that, there's people that'll watch a movie that haven't played a game. And if it makes you interested in it, you might want to go out and try and, find that game. Uncharted is doing really well. This movie is going to do over $300 million at the box office. There's a lot of people seeing this movie that have never played Uncharted. So it could have a synergy type effect. So yeah, we need to see. But if Halo does well, I would do that. I would look more into movies and streaming. But comics, you can't rule comics out either. No, that'd be cool. I know they do some. There's been some Halo comics and some Gears of War comics and stuff. Danger Man. How fast could Elden Ring sell 20 million? Quick. Seems almost certain it'll hit that figure, and I think it could be in Q4 or even earlier than that. 15 million this month isn't absurd. It's so hard to know exactly how high Elden Ring is. Every single number we have points towards an insanely big launch. But we still haven't gotten an official number through Bandai Namco. But if you look at what happened in Japan, physical alone was the biggest From Software launch ever in Japan. And keep in mind, digital has grown significantly since then. So if this was having a bigger launch than games back in the day, older ones, right, like Dark Souls 2 and 3 and stuff that essentially had like no digital. Dark Souls 3 some, but like you go far back as Dark Souls 2, it's essentially almost no digital in Japan. Very, very, very small percentage. To now, whenever Japan still isn't as digital heavy as it is in the West, but still you're probably talking 20-30% of sales is going to be digital on that game, right? In the West, it's more like 50 plus. But in Japan, you're still talking 20 to 30%. Yeah, huge, right? Great in Japan. You look at what happened in the UK. Absolutely freaking enormous launch, right? You saw Christopher Dring say it was the biggest new IP launch since Destiny in 2014. Then you look at the United States. This game was the biggest launch in the last 12 months besides Call of Duty Vanguard. I mean, we're looking at extraordinary numbers here. Is it at 15 million in a month? You never know. There are some indicators it could be something crazy like that. No matter what, we're looking at over 10 million in its first month. There's just no way. I'm seeing a lot of people run around and post that this game has already sold 10 million on PC. Keep in mind, y'all, and I haven't tweeted about it, but I've seen this posted a lot. That is not a confirmed number. That is an estimate that has been put out there. Now, could it have sold 10 million on PC? Not impossible it's hit 10 million already when you look at the crazy numbers it's done, right? Nearly 1 million concurrent players. Could be. I just want to caution, we don't know for sure that it sold over 10 million on PC already. That is an estimate. But at the very least, this thing definitely is going to sell over 10 million units in its first month. And maybe something crazy like 15. Now, how fast could it hit 20? Indications or legs are great. This thing is still the #1 selling game on Steam basically every single freaking day. Still putting up huge concurrent player counts. And not only that, we got some data out of the UK that including digital, this game in its second week only dropped 61%. Y'all, that's a fantastic hold. Some people might be like, 61%? That sounds like a lot. It's really not, especially for a game that launched so big in its first week. Oftentimes, you see a game dip 70 or maybe even 80% in its second week. It happened with Horizon. Horizon Forbidden West second week in the UK dropped by 80%. Elden Ring only dropped 61%. So legs are looking good too. So 20 million by the end of the year is not impossible if the launch numbers are as big as we think they are. If they're between 10 to 15 million in its first month, I do expect that's going to slow down some. But over 20 million before the year's over, if launch is that high, not insane at all, Danger Man. Not insane at all. We're looking at one of the biggest launches of any video game in years, right? Again, I'm not going to say #1, but one of, yeah, huge. Split End 89 saying, everybody hit that like button. I would appreciate it. Don't feel pressured. Don't feel obligated. But hit that like button if you like doing these chats. Helps the YouTube algorithm. All right, 15 minutes left in the tank and then I'm out. Actually 10. 10 minutes and I'm out. 10 minutes and I'm out. Phil Morley. Hey Benji, just coming off from a COVID week and looking to chill with your stream. Well, thank you so much, Phil, for being here. I hope you're doing all right, Phil. Hope you're doing all right, buddy. I'm glad that this could give you something to distract you. I hope you're having a good time, and I hope that COVID wasn't too rough for you. I got COVID back in January, and it hit me pretty good, right? I was vaccinated, so it didn't like completely rock my world, but Phil, I felt pretty freaking crappy. And so you have my sympathies, Phil. Hope you're doing good. Hope you're holding up well, man. And I hope you had fun at the stream today. Danger Man, hello, hello, because that's what you always say. Yeah, sorry. I always start the chat the same. Woo! Indian Keanu, I love your name. Wow, that is amazing. Indian Keanu. Hey man, was Elden Ring tracked for only 2 days by the NPD? It was. So whenever I made my tweet, because I talked about how crazy it is that its first month has already outsold the lifetime of Battlefield 2042 and Far Cry 6 and games like that. I actually hadn't looked at what the exact tracking period for this NPD cycle was, because some people forget. Sometimes this is a hypothetical, but sometimes, let's say it's March NPD data, sometimes that will actually trickle into the next month a little bit, right? So it just depends on how the weeks are tracked. Sometimes it's March NPD, but you might still have the first 4 or 5 days of April included in March, right? Doesn't always happen, but you do see that sometimes. They don't just strictly track every month, like February 1st to the last day of February. It's all about how the weeks track. So I actually hadn't looked to see exactly when the cutoff period was for this one, and it was 2 days. So as insane as Elden Ring's performance was, that was only for a couple of days. Imagine what it's going to be for its first full month. I mean, crazy, crazy, crazy. Biglow25, what do you think of the rumor of Xbox having 2 showcases in May and September, and what does that mean for E3? Biglow, I would say I have no idea if that is true. I have no insider info on this. I would love for it to be true because, like I just mentioned a bit ago, 1 E3 showcase per year is not cutting it nowadays. It's just not. The way that news cycles work, the way that, keeping an engaged audience works, everyone's connected to the internet nowadays, right? You always want to keep people engaged through marketing. It's not like the old days, right? Back before the internet was so mainstream, you could kind of get away with 1 big show a year, right? Because people weren't constantly online looking for what's next. But nowadays, you need it. You need at least 2 big shows, right? In my opinion. So I'm not saying both have to be an E3 level show, but you need some solid presentations besides just one. So I hope it's true. I hope. Randy Norman, Benji, what is your most anticipated Xbox first party game and why? Randy, for me, this one's easy. It's Fable. So I love the old Fable games. Love them. I have some seriously amazing memories of Fable 1 and Fable 2. Fable 3 I liked a bit less, I'll be honest with you, but I still liked it. But Fable 1 and 2, I loved those games so much whenever they came out, and I love Playground. Playground is such a fantastic studio. The Forza Horizon games are my favorite racing series of all time, right? Of any type of racing game. Forza Horizon, it's my favorite racing series, so it's got to be Fable. Fable is definitely my most anticipated first-party game. There's some other ones I'm really hyped for. Can't wait for Hellblade 2. Really liked the first game. I think, if I remember, I even got the Platinum Trophy on Hellblade 1. I'm pretty sure I did. So really excited for Hellblade 2. Starfield, I'm super excited for. Starfield's probably my second most anticipated. Love Bethesda. Love sci-fi. But I got to put Fable number 1. Danger Man says, my view on Horizon 2 is that people want PS5s to play them. I agree with you. I think if Horizon's tracking, as I said at the top, clearly this game's selling well, right? People shouldn't go around and say Horizon's a bomb. I'm just saying it might not be close to a record overall for PlayStation. But if sales are, a bit lower than what some of us thought it was going to be, right? I think a lot of us thought it was going to enter that 3 million club in 3 days. We don't know for sure that it didn't, but there are signs it was not. We never got PR or anything from Sony. If it came in under what a lot of us thought it was going to be, I really think that's the story. I really think it can be mostly explained through people waiting to get PS5s to play it because they want to play the best version of the game. So, Danger Man, I would actually agree with you on that. I think we had some super chats coming in here right at the end. I got a last couple to get to. Kevin Kanye here with a 5 super chat. And then says, what are your predictions for Kirby and Switch Sports? Ooh, great question. So Kirby, I expect to be definitely the biggest selling Kirby game ever, right? Maybe that sounds controversial, but I really think so. I see way more excitement for this than I've ever seen for a Kirby game. Exact units, that's a little bit harder to say. Am I expecting this to be the next Mario Odyssey? No. I wonder, and this isn't like a lock by any means, I wonder if it can sell like something like Luigi's Mansion 3. That'd be an excellent result if it could hit something like that. People forget Luigi's Mansion 3 sold extremely well. I'm not going to tell you that that's like 100% where I think it's going to land, but if it did do something like a Luigi's Mansion 3 number, that would be fantastic. But I am expecting it definitely to be the biggest Kirby game. I've never seen an anticipation for a Kirby game like this for sure. I wouldn't go in thinking this is going to be a 20 million Mario Odyssey type thing, but yeah, if it could do like Luigi's Mansion 3, that'd be really awesome. And then Benji here with a 5 super chat. Thank you so much, Benji. That's your second one. Benji, how big are Pokemon Scarlet and Violet will be? Arceus seems to have revitalized the franchise. Could Gen 9 be the next Switch game to reach 30 million? Ooh, that's a big number. Let me see something really quick. What is the last update for Sword and Shield? Off the top of my head, I don't know, but it is over 20 million. 1 second. Sword and Shield's at 23.9 million. So can it hit 30? This is a good question. It looks feasible. Benji, I'm not going to lock it because we don't know how good the game's going to be, right? It's always the wild card. But I don't think it's impossible this sells better than Sword and Shield because, as you mentioned, Arceus, at least at launch, it was the biggest Switch launch. Legs right now don't look as good, but still good, right? Not bad legs. But right now, just a little bit of the data, and it's hard to know for sure, but a little bit of the data, it did launch outside of holiday season. So that makes it a harder comparable to something like, what's happened with Sword and Shield, which was launched during the holidays. So we need to see that. I'm not going to judge its legs at all right now. But it's possible. Yeah, Benji, I think it's possible it could hit 30. It's possible. Not a lock, but this game doing better than Sword and Shield, which is already right now at basically 24 million units, and it's not done. It's going to still sell a few million more. It could. Benji, don't lock it, but 30 is possible. It's in the cards. I would say it's in the cards, yes. No matter what, over 20. It's not going to do under 20 million. It will be over 20. 30 is in the playing field, though. Yes, it is. It is in the playing field. Okay, I'm going to just hit like a rapid fire 1 or 2 more questions, and I got to go. I wish I didn't have to, but I got to go to work. Slow-mo backslap. What's up, Slow-mo? Is Miles Morales continuing to sell because it's usually associated with a PS5 bundle? No, because well, actually, this is interesting because of how like third-party bundles would work, right? That would be a little different. So NPD does not actually include bundled software in their software totals. However, that means games that are bundled inside the system, right? Like, let's say that Sony comes out, and let's say like Sony's holiday bundle they had 1 year. 1 year their holiday bundle was, it came with The Last of Us Remastered, Horizon Zero Dawn, and I think it was Spider-Man 2018, something like that. It was a crazy bundle, right? None of those would get added to the NPD total for the month. None of those games. So if the PS4 sold 300,000, it was more than that, but let's just throw a random number. 300,000 PS4s of that bundle were sold that month. Would every one of those games get 300,000 units of software added on? No, they wouldn't. They actually are not included in the NPD software rankings. But third-party ones I'm not as sure about, actually, Slow-Mo. It's a great question. I would ask Matt Piscatella, because I don't know, like, if you get a third-party bundle from GameStop and they're including Miles Morales in that bundle, does that get counted as a piece of software? I'm not sure. Not sure on that, actually. You'd have to ask Matt. I'm going to say maybe they do, but I don't think that's the only thing you could say. And there's a really key reason for that, Slow-Mo. It always pops up in the digital charts every single month that Sony themselves releases, right? So even if that's a bit of a factor, it's not the main one, I would say, because Sony's own digital charts always have it in there. And no bundles would count for that. That's going to be just purely how the game's selling digitally. So, you know, maybe it is elevating the numbers a little bit, but I would say not in a massive way, right? Come on, I gotta go. I wish I could literally answer every single question, but I just can't. Artunism, Triangle Strategy in Japan outselling GT7. Triangle Strategy looks to have done well, and GT7 also pretty good launch, right? Looks like it's outselling Sport, and actually by quite a bit, especially in the UK. Sounds PP7. Sad about Forspoken's delay, but I thought the new gameplay looked nice. What do you think, Benji? I completely agree, Sounds PP7. Completely agree. You know, I've been positive about the delay on my Twitter because I actually think this game needed it. If you look back at the gameplay that was shown in December, and you look at, which I'm guessing that was probably pretty much older build too, right? They showed it in December, but usually you don't show like the build that's out like today. Like to press or something, it's like whatever's your most stable build, and a lot of times that build could be a month even older, right? What they showed in December last year could have actually been a build from November for all we know. But I thought that looked pretty rough, what was shown, right? It just did not look polished. Frame rate looked choppy. Things didn't look great. This last showing we've seen of Forspoken, both the State of Play trailer as well as the new gameplay that came out from Game Informer. They released a new gameplay footage. It's the best Forspoken's look since they announced it. So that's very encouraging because this game's already had a few months of polish since the last time we saw it. Now it's going to get like an extra 5+ months of polish, which is quite a bit of time actually for a polishing phase of a game. Like you can change a lot in 5 months. You can't completely rewrite a game, but in terms of really polishing the package, you can do a lot. So, Sounds PP7, I'm feeling way better about Forspoken. Yep, I think it was smart to delay it. That was the correct decision to make, yes. All right, I'm going to do 2 more and I'm out. 2 questions and I'm out. And I wish I could do more, y'all. I'm sorry if I miss your question. Pray for X. Benji, do you think Starfield will be bigger than Elden Ring? I will say no, but it is going to be real big. People should not underestimate how big Starfield could be. I'm going to say no. I don't see how it could overcome the gap with no PlayStation version. Starfield will be gargantuan on PC. Y'all need to be prepared for that. It will be a behemoth on PC, actually. But I mean, Elden Ring clearly has sold millions on PlayStation. I don't think it can overcome that gap. So I'm going to say no. I'm going to say Starfield overall will not be bigger than Elden Ring, but still huge. It's going to be huge. And in total players, you never know because of the Game Pass factor, right? I mean, look at Halo Infinite. That thing hit over 20 million players in a short window. So total players is a wild card just because Game Pass by then should be over 30 million subscribers. You have to imagine a large chunk, not all, but a large chunk are going to interact with that game through Game Pass. Total players is a wild card, but in terms of sales, no. I do not expect it to sell better than Elden Ring. No. And then the last one, I'm seriously, I wish I could do more. I'm sorry. Portal Player gets the last one. I'm so sorry, everyone. How do you think Ghostwire Tokyo will do? Portal Player, right now, my expectations are low. Just because I hate to say it, I love Bethesda, but outside of Bethesda Game Studios games, right? Fallout and Elder Scrolls and Doom, those are the games that sell. A lot of Bethesda games just don't put up big units, right? I'm not going to say they're all bombs, but they're not all like huge sellers, right? If you look at Dishonored, if you look at Prey, if you look at Deathloop, if you look at The Evil Within 2, if you look at Wolfenstein 2, I mean, if you look at most of their output, it's just not huge numbers. So I'm going to go in assuming Ghostwire Tokyo, same sort of deal, maybe around like, a Deathloop performance or maybe even a little less. I would love to be surprised by it. I thought the last footage actually looked really engaged me. I actually really liked the last showing of that game. And I will also say, Portal Player, it's a good sign how early this game got into reviewers' hands. It's not always the case, but often when a game gets, in reviewers' hands super early, it can mean, not always, it can mean some confidence from the publisher. And reviewers have already had this game, for a while already. It's already been like days and days they've had it. And I think they got it over 2 weeks before launch. So Portal Player, I'm hoping it does well, but my expectations are not super high. All right, everyone, thanks for coming out to the chat. Thanks for a great turnout. Thank you for a ton of freaking questions. I know I missed a ton, but bring them to the chat next week. If I didn't get to them this week, we will be back next week. Subscribe to my channel if you're not already. We do one of these chats every single week. Follow me on Twitter. I'm Benji-Sales on Twitter if you don't already. Odds are 99% if you're here that you do follow me on Twitter already, but just in case you don't, that's where I'm most active. And yeah, I'll see you all next week. Thanks for a great chat. Thanks for the super chats. Stay safe, play some games, and I will catch you next time here on YouTube or on Twitter. Bye, everybody. Have a great day. See ya. Bye, 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 bye.